And up next is going to be A Touch of Power, Book 2, titled Adapt, written by Jade. This is 555 pages, $4.99. It is available on Kindle Unlimited. And here's the author's description. Improvise, overcome, adapt. Only 5 days have passed since Jade was brought to a distant world and a new life. Mobile for the first time ever, Jade is given the chance to do something she's always wanted: attend school. Dracona isn't your typical school, however. In Andara, she needs to learn all the skills an adventurer needs. For her, that means how to cast magic and use weapons without hurting herself. She'll have to learn fast because the obstacle course isn't the only thing challenging her progress. She's racing against the clock to learn how to beat the Mesmer before they find her. With both enemies and allies all around, Jade must hit the ground running because what's chasing her may be worse than the hospital bed she left behind. Turns out that adapting to a new world is only the first step. And honestly, if the novel was that interesting as the blurb described it, I would be so happy. Unfortunately, didn't quite meet that standard. Full disclosure, I received an advance copy for review. I purchased a copy as soon as it became available. Unfortunately, the story overall is kind of a disappointment. And I'm going to be specific about what I was disappointed by in a minute, but it was. The story overall is still very slice of life. It, however, has even less conflict than book 1. Instead, it kind of shifts to a magical academy story with the main character breezing through every class, being liked by everybody, and eventually expanding her magical powers. There are some minor social conflicts in the story, but everything kind of goes really super easily for the main character, and there were no real challenges for her. And that's kind of one of the things I was disappointed about. In book 1, the main character starts off in the world with little to nothing, basically. She has her power, she doesn't understand it, and she starts off super skinny with like lower stats than everybody. And over the course of that first novel, she becomes more and more powerful, and that's definitely that power curve that I enjoyed watching. Her using her intelligence, her personality, and definitely her siphon ability to kind of grow in power. And she still kind of does that here in this novel, but she starts off overpowered, and she just kind of becomes more so as the novel goes on. And in book 2, unfortunately, there just aren't any challenges for her. Like anything that she does in book 2 is just really automatically successful. And that to me is not as interesting as watching somebody, learn and grow and struggle. And that's probably one of the things that made this story less enjoyable for me. There were a few minor conflicts, but overall, there's really no antagonist to the main character. And again, there's no real challenge. She goes to school. The novel kind of takes place in that first week of school on her new academy, where she and most of it is spent between she's taking the fire class, and she's taking the lightning class, and she's taking the darkness course and magic, and she's learning how to use the bow and a bunch of other slice of life magical academy stuff. But in every single class that she goes into, she's like, she's automatically already better than everybody there, and sometimes even better than the teachers. And that for me is just that's interesting. That's okay, but it's not really interesting to me. There are a few places in the story that I thought were interesting, where the main character was experimenting and recreating Earth technology using magic, especially the scene where she's trying to create a certain Jedi weapon using light magic. I thought that was kind of cool. But overall, it's just the Magical Academy stuff just didn't work for me because, again, there was really no challenge for what the main character is doing, even really socially. Everybody is deferential to her. She's super popular suddenly. And even other nobles, even though there's might be small initial conflict, just as soon as they learn, she's like, oh my God, I can't believe you're the traveler. I'm so sorry. I was so rude and mean to you. And it just got kind of repetitive pretty quickly. There is some minor romance stuff in here that just didn't really fit. But still, if you like that kind of stuff, you're going to enjoy this more than I did, unfortunately. There are a few action paragraphs in the novel. That's as much as there are, really, where the main character faces off against old enemies from the last book. But they're really small sections. However, the thing that really disappointed me the most was that the main character in this novel is supposed to be training for this big monster hunt. And it's emphasized again and again that the longer she waits, the more that the people who are being kidnapped are going to be eaten and tortured by these monsters. Yet the main character takes the entire novel basically almost a week to go to classes, advance her business interests, learn new magic spells or how to control her magic a little bit, instead of hunting down these monsters. And even the main character kind of, comments on this saying, I know I should be hunting these monsters, but I'm preparing. And that's kind of the justification of keeping her in that magical academy setting. And it just feels like an excuse to show the magical academy story. And the entire plotline for the Monster Hunt is never resolved. That's a little spoilery, but I think that's kind of a big point. At least for me, it was that this plotline is kind of promised in the story that this is going to like show up eventually, and it never does. And for me, that was probably the biggest disappointment. Is a little frustrating in that it just never fulfilled. I feel like there was going to come almost an unfulfilled promise that the novel story's probably made, and that it was like at the end, like, wait, that's it? They're not actually going to do anything with this? Not even like go start like a journey and initial fight or something? Nope. Just that's what it is. Overall, the slice of life stuff is okay. Again, the main character is so written, very bubbly personality. She sings her pop songs with little variations on there. The Magical Academy stuff just didn't work for me in general. I mean, I don't really like Magical Academy stuff. I always compare it to Harry Potter, and it never lives up to it. So that's a thing for me, I guess. But here it was just like, there were no challenges for the main character. So even if the main character is overpowered, there are ways to like still create conflict and still make the story interesting. And this one didn't really do much in that respect, at least for me. And again, lack of action was always the thing. Like, okay, I can I don't want to say put up with like Magical Academy sections if like there's going to be some action sometimes, and there just wasn't here either. So that was also like, maybe that's just what the series is going to be. It's going to be like a non-actiony series, and that's perfectly fine. It's just, again, one of those things I always enjoy. Like, you're going to have magic, you're literally going to have fights against monsters. Why not show them more? It could be a bigger thing, but again, not my series, obviously. Story doesn't work for me. Gets a score of 6 out of 10. However, if you love Magical Academy stories, or you just like really super loved book 1, you're probably going to still like this. Like I said, the things that a lot of people enjoy from book 1 are still here. I mean, the main character is so perky and peppy, and she's very interesting personality, and that's kind of a big draw for some people. However, I think I'm going to like go with some personality stuff. And that another reviewer I listened to recently, he was listening to the audiobook, and he said, the main character is kind of like Mary Poppins. She's practically perfect in every way, and it gets a little annoying. And for some people, that aspect is still here too. So just be aware of that. For me, again, the novel didn't really work this time around. I'll still plan to read book 3. I really do. And I'm hoping it's, I'm thinking there's going to be more action there maybe, because it's going to be that monster hunt. So maybe that's where the payoff comes in, but I'll have to wait and see. For now though, Adept, A Touch of Power, book number 2, gets a score of 6 out of 10. Doesn't work for me. Doesn't mean it's bad. Not even boring. Just didn't hit good for me. So there we go.